Right, I think I will go get started. Welcome everyone to this CISR bi-weekly seminar. We are on April 17th, and this will be the last seminar we'll have for the spring semester. Today, we are very excited to have Sonia Glumich speak to us. Sonia is a senior research computer scientist. The computer, I like the fact that it is emphasized, for the Air Force Research Laboratory Information Directorate in Rome, New York. She is currently the program manager for Viceroy, which you are all familiar with. She is, in terms of background, a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, where she earned her BS in computer science and an MS in information technology. She has a long and distinguished career with the FRL, and her research interests include security systems engineering, cyber vulnerability assessment, and cyber education, which sounds a lot like what we do at CISR. Today, she would be talking about Air Force Research Laboratory Information's general AFRL's overview and opportunities. And without any further ado, I will let you go get started, Sonia. Welcome.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. I am, so pleased to be here. Thank you for the invitation to speak to the students. I had such a nice visit last fall when I came to visit your beautiful campus. I got introduced to concepts like, cougar calves, and I got to try your cougar gold cheese, and it was a great visit. And I'm also really looking forward to coming out in May for your summer boot camp. So I'm looking forward to meeting more of you in person at that time. All right. Well, so today I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of how we see cyber at AFRL. That's one of our, it's called a core technical competency. So it's one of our thrust areas. And then I also want to talk about some opportunities for the professors and for the students that are here at AFRL-RI that you could potentially take advantage of. All right, so disclaimer, if I express any opinions or conclusions, they're mine and don't necessarily reflect AFRL or the U.S. Air Force or the Department of Defense or the U.S. government. All right, so today I just want to introduce AFRL-RI. What is it? Where is it? What do we study? And then an overview of the cyber area, and then share these opportunities with you. All right, so AFRL is actually distributed in many different places across the country. We're at the STAR up there in Rome, New York, and we focus on information. And so that includes things like, we have our cyber CTC, we have our automated command and control, which focuses a lot on AI ML. We have our connectivity CTC, which focuses on, the connections between systems and the communications between the systems. And then we also have a processing and exploitation CTC, which has to do with, when you have all this data, what do you do with it and how can you make the best use of it? So there's also a lot of AI ML applications there as well. We have a bunch of different places. We have folks out in directed energy in Hawaii. We have munitions, things that go boom down in Eglin Air Force Base, Florida. We actually have someone from munitions coming up this summer to talk at our summer internship program. So some of you will get to meet her and learn all about cyber-enabled munitions as they tend to become more interconnected and more advanced. We have really early basic research at our Air Force Office of Scientific Research. And we also have space vehicles and directed energy at Kirtland, and kind of our headquarters is in Ohio. And then we also have some international sites as well that do some work. Is everybody hearing the feedback?
Yes, we are hearing feedback.
Okay, I wonder, does somebody have their mic on? Well, it sounds a little better. Thank you. Okay, so our mission at AFRL is we are leading, discovering, developing and delivering science and technology innovation for warfighters. So again, our focus is always on, what we can do to help the warfighter. And we want to arm the warfighters to dominate in time, space, and complexity across all operating domains. So multi-domain operations is a really big thing. And in that, cyber is but, one domain. All right. so that's the overall AFRL mission and vision. When it comes to the Information Directorate here in Rome, New York, our mission is to explore, prototype, and demonstrate these game-changing technologies to enable our nation to maintain its advantage. And our vision is to lead the Air Force in the nation. We really focus on C4I, which is command, control, communications, computers, and intelligence, and doing that research and development and transition to the warfighter. So they have Rome equals C4I and cyber. All right, so the Information Directorate campus, this is where I work. It's a 65-acre campus. We have 30 laboratories and facilities and a lot of square footage space. If you look down in the lower left corner, that's Innovari. It's actually outside of the fence. And that's our nonprofit partner. That's where the Griffith Institute is. They are the folks that do a lot of the execution for Viceroy. And so this is also where I sit, is up at Innovari. And so for any of you folks coming this summer to the Maven internship, you'll be spending some of your time there, and then also some of the time on the actual research site. All right, so Innovari Advancement Center, I just have this in here because again, it plays a key role kind of in our Viceroy program. And so they have all sorts of interesting things here at Innovari. For one thing, it is right next to an airstrip. So where we have our summer internship, we actually have a patio that overlooks the runway. So you get to see Apache helicopters coming in and landing. You get to see some of the big military planes taking off and landing. So it's a really neat place. They also have what is known as their Sky Dome, which does UAV testing. And then they also have a quantum lab here as well. So they have kind of a wide variety of facilities to support us. A lot of it is so we can support things like students, and then also if we want to do international work, because sometimes we have more trouble getting temporary folks or folks from other countries onto campus. And so this is a great facility for that. All right, so I kind of talked about the different 4 technical competencies that RI has. I am in cyber, and so we are leveraging and shaping the cyber domain to the nation's advantage. All right, so when it comes to cyber, we look at developing in the science and technology. What we want is cyberspace superiority, and then we're also focusing again on these multi-domain integrated cyberspace operations. You know, we've moved beyond just enterprise IT and thinking about, you know, routers and switches and nodes to looking at things like weapon systems. I had mentioned Eglin and RW, our sister munitions directorate. Again, you know, in the past, you would drop a munition, it was gravity aided, and it would just, you know, fall on its trajectory. But these days, you know, they want things that you can control in real time. And so all those things have connectivity, they have more complexity. And so, you know, cyber comes into play. I mean, certainly cyber defense, we want to defend those things so that we don't lose control of those things. And so our vision is to equip the Air Force with these technologies that enable us to be free to do the things we want to do while denying our adversaries the same. And so we have kind of these core principles that we you know, organize our research around, especially when we're looking at new research projects in the cyber defense realm. So we want to look at our technologies and we want to say, you know, are we doing the right thing? Is, you know, whatever is proposed, is it in scope? And then effectiveness, how well does the technology perform functionally what it's supposed to do? And then finally, risk. You know, whenever you're introducing additional complexity or additional systems in order to protect something, or, you know, on the offensive side, in order to attack something, you're introducing additional vulnerabilities to your overall cyber ecosystem. And so, you know, we've seen that in a lot of recent events where a lot of times attackers are going for, you know, the systems that have the most access and have the most reach. And so they might do something like they might compromise an update that is pushed to many different systems, or they might you know, compromise something like an intrusion detection system or a firewall or a network management system, something that has a lot of reach. And so when we're introducing these systems, we need to say, you know, is the risk worth it to introduce these new systems? And since we work for the Air Force, our first priority is mission assurance. It's a little bit of a change in mindset from thinking about, you have to secure every single system and every single network to the same extent. And that just might not be true, because you might look at a mission and you might say, well, here is the subset of components that are extremely critical. And if these things fail, then we can't complete our mission. And so, assuring those systems would be your priority, just because there are so many systems out there, it's impossible to secure everything. All right, so again, we're trying to leverage and shape the cyber domain to the nation's advantage. All right, so things that are out there, if you're ever curious about strategy, these are documents that we look at when we're planning our portfolio or when we're thinking about new efforts that we want to start. Well, we look at strategy, and we get a whole cascading series of strategic documents, all the way from the White House down to, we had our own cyber CTC strategy. And so, each one of these, subsequent strategies is trying to align with and support the strategies above it. But the really nice thing is that a lot of these are unclassified and can be accessed by the public. So if you're curious, and want to know more in depth about what the Air Force thinks about cyber, what its importance is, then you can kind of Google these things, like the Department of Defense cyber strategy. So pulling from all those different strategic documents, we kind of pulled out these three main thrusts that we should support, as the Air Force Research Lab. One is that we should assure information as it traverses mission infrastructure, supporting operations in all domains. So that's kind of the more defensive side of things. And then also projecting power using cyberspace and as a domain. And so that's things like cyber operations air-enabled, counter-adversary defense systems, and joint intelligence preparations of the operational environment. And then the final is kind of those multi-domain operations where cyber isn't just in its own little area right here separate. It's something that is integrated, within and across the other domains. And so those are kind of the main strategic thrusts that we get when looking at strategic documents from the Air Force and the DoD. All right. So a really big thing that came out about a year ago from the Secretary of Defense, Kendall, was what the Air Force operational imperatives. And so this was, his attempt to communicate, here are the things that we really want to focus on for the Air Force when it comes to technology. And so there were 4 out of the 7 that really applied to the cyber realm. And so one is defining resilient space order of battle and architecture, so both defensive and offensive. This is definitely timely. So although we're called the Air Force Research Lab, they have the saying that we're one lab supporting 2 services. So not only is our goal to support the Air Force, we also want to support the Space Force as well. And these are actually ranked in order of, emphasis. So another one in addition is defining the next generation air dominant systems of systems. So in terms of, what we do here at the Information Directorate, we definitely have a lot of work in the uncrewed aerial vehicle space, definitely things with securing command and control. Number 5 is defining optimized resilient basing, sustainment, and communications. So we have a really successful counter uncrewed aerial vehicles. So that is, defending a base from UAS that may be flying in and identifying those and trying to identify what's a threat or what's not a threat. And so they have things that are both in the kinetic realm to take out a threat and also in the cyber realm. So they actually have a platform, kind of like Metasploit for UAS, which is pretty cool. Then they also have things like they're working on solutions for traffic management, because again, looking to the future, we may have a lot more commercial traffic in that space, and being able to track and differentiate between what's a threat and what's not a threat is very important. So definitely 5 is something we support here. And then finally 7 is a little bit of a catch-all. It has to do with transitioning to a wartime posture against a peer competitor And in that case, cyber is going to become very important because, we all know that, folks, different nation states, they have different exploits in their pocket or different capabilities in their pocket in the cyber realm that they're waiting to use. They're not going to use it until we actually move into a wartime posture against them. And so we need to make sure that our systems are resilient against those threats. All right, so in addition to, the cascading series of Air Force strategic documents, it's the same thing on the Space Force. And so you'll see a very similar set of documents. Again, all the way you may get presidential guidance, DoD guidance, Space Force guidance, all the way down to the low level in terms of the strategy. And so some of the things to pull from that, it's very similar to cyber, although they're more focused on preserving freedom of action for us in space, rather than, they don't really mention as much the offensive side of things. So our core competencies here would be in space security. Again, making sure that our systems are going to operate the way we want them to. Combat power projection, space mobility and logistics, information mobility. Definitely, we use satellites for all sorts of communication and moving information to places maybe where other types of connections don't go. And then also space domain awareness, which is a really huge thing. There's more and more objects in space as we go. So not only for the safety of our spacecraft, but also, they're developing all sorts of new capabilities in space, including testing things like arms. So, when you look at the future of space battles, maybe we get into more, futuristic type scenarios as we go. So RI has a lot of different cross-directorate cyber collaborations because cyber is such an enabling domain. There are applications to cyber throughout all of our different sister directorates. So we have the 711th, which focuses a lot on kind of the human aspects and of things. And so with AIML, that's a huge thing in terms of assisting the operator, helping the operator do a better job, getting them the information that they need. We have ROI, which is sensors, and certainly, all of our systems, a lot of our systems rely on sensors, whether it's a UAS or a satellite system. And so in that realm, we want to make sure that, our sensor data is good. Also that our sensor data isn't going to interfere with some of the more sensitive data like command and control, and making sure that we're doing the protection there in developing those systems. RV is kind of our space sister directorate. And so, a real big thing there is in hardening our space systems as well. So again, making sure they're operating as intended. They have a lot of different cyber components. And then RW, that's the munitions. And again, we certainly care about the resiliency and correct operations of our cyber munitions. All right, so some of the cyber trends of interest that we're certainly keeping a close eye on. One is the ubiquity of cyber. We all know that cyber is becoming increasingly pervasive. It's hard to escape it. So especially with the coming of 5G and the Internet of Things. And so, we're seeing cyber more and more in our daily lives and in many aspects, from our toaster to our refrigerator. Definitely the growth and availability of commercial assets. So a lot of times, even in the military, we're relying on a lot of these commercial assets that maybe we didn't, create ourselves or we don't control. So that's certainly something we need to take into account when we're thinking about mission assurance. And then the explosion of publicly available information. I don't know how many of you have, played around with PAI or AIML, but it's amazing, what things like ChatGPT can come up with, pulling from all these vast stores of publicly available information. Certainly increasing complexity, which is, our systems become more complex, and as they grow in complexity, they also grow typically in vulnerability as well. So this can be a disadvantage on the defensive side. The more complex it is, the more lines of code you have, the more components you have, the more opportunities for vulnerabilities to occur. And that certainly is an advantage for cyber offense on the flip side of that, because again, there's more vulnerabilities that you could potentially exploit. Also, a continued military reliance on commercial assets, kind of alluded to that before. So, in the past, I don't know, 15 or so years, there's been the move to the commercial cloud and using the cloud for storing military data. But again, we don't own those assets. We don't administer them, but we still need to find a way to leverage those securely. So we have, for example, one effort called Rescue Clouds, which is looking at how you securely outsource computation and storage across the cloud, in some cases, preserving the confidentiality of your data. And certainly commercial components in military systems, the supply chain, you get certain components and you might not know where those subcomponents were manufactured. Were they manufactured in a foreign country that's hostile to the United States? So those are certainly trends and concerns. Definitely increased functionality within and reliance on the space domain. Again, that's kind of a, we've always supported RV, our sister directorate in the space domain, but with the stand up of the Space Force, that's an increasing emphasis for us. So again, you're expanding your network access and, you're looking at forming these mesh networks in space for increased resilience. And then finally, resource scarcity driving increased worldwide conflict. We all read the news. And so, as things become a little more volatile, we may see a shift in D4M effects. And so that is what people actually do when they have access to the systems. A lot of times right now, adversaries might get access and they're content to kind of sit back and watch. But we may see a shift towards some of those more destroy, disrupt, delay, deny types of D4M effects, and potential for increase in attacks with greater visibility and effects. All right, so technological trends of interest, things that we have research in, or places we want to go, Internet of Things and 5G, 6G, future G. We definitely have work in that area. Zero trust architectures is an interesting area because there's been a lot of guidance with respect to this. However, people who work in cybersecurity take a look at that and we say, well, you have a centralized policy manager, just like an intrusion detection system. So is it really zero trust? Because you still have to trust your policy manager that is mediating all these interactions. But still, that's a reality that we need to deal with because that's where the DoD is going. Agile development, definitely. DevSecOps, there's been a growth in software factories in the Air Force, a lot of interest in that, in doing things more rapidly. But again, when you work on the defensive side, you say, all right, well, how do you make sure that you're securing your software chain and making sure that you're not missing anything if you're moving faster? Autonomy, AI/ML, everyone's interested in that. In terms of our cyber efforts, though, we aren't the ones that are developing new algorithms. We're more interested in leveraging those algorithms. So for example, I had talked a little bit about our unmanned aerial systems team. They're very interested in using AI/ML in order to, better detect the difference between a bird and a micro UAS. So there's different applications, across the different areas where we work. Certainly the offensive and defensive implications of future computing platforms. We have work at AFRL in quantum computing and neuromorphic computing. And we look at that and we say in the cyber realm and say, well, what does that mean for folks who work on the offensive side and on the defensive side? Does that mean that through these types of systems, are they going to be easier to attack? Are they going to be easier to defend? What does that mean for cyber warfare in general? And then fully immersive environments, virtual and augmented reality. There are units in the Air Force that use virtual reality and augmented reality right now for training. But again, and I've certainly seen demonstrations of operators flying UAVs using VR, AR headsets. But again, these present new avenues of potential attack and new systems that we need to defend when we're thinking cyber. All right, so in cyber, our CTC is divided into 3 main lines of effort, and all of our efforts fall under one of these 3 lines. So the first one is cyber war fighting, and so this is our defensive operations, our offensive cyber cyber operations. DODIN, that's kind of the information, the DoD information network. And so those are all the efforts that are doing to that. So this is kind of our war fighting, you know, when we're actually doing our war fighting, these are the types of tools that we would use. That's in contrast to cyber assurance, and these are the components and processes that provide these security guarantees for our systems. So things like formal methods. These are the things that you do when you're building your system before you ever get into any kind of a conflict. So these are the things that, you know, this is the area that really focuses on that. You know, when we transition into a wartime posture, we'll really know how well we did on the cyber assurance piece at that point. And then the final one is looking at the convergence between the electromagnetic spectrum and cyber. And so it's kind of this fusion of wired and wireless capabilities. And so a good example of that, again, is our counter UAS program, which uses, you know, both kinetic capabilities to take out a small drone. You know, for example, you know, there are solutions where you might fire a net at it, right, and take it down. And then you also have cyber capabilities where you are sending attacks, you know, through RF signals. All right, so emergent cyber challenges that we're interested in FY23 and beyond, definitely automated integrated cyber capabilities. You know, we have to be faster in order to keep up with the evolving threat. The security implications of modern systems development practices. You know, as systems become more complex, it's harder to do, you know, things like formal methods on them. And, you know, we're moving to things like DevSecOps again, where we're trying to do things faster. Well, what are the security implications of those, and what can we do to ensure that those development practices are still producing better systems? Certainly, we still want to stay in the EM cyberspace. The cyber implications to information warfare, the kind of human side of that is something that we here at RI haven't been as involved in. We've been more on the technology side, but this is an area that our leadership wants to get more into. Protocol analysis techniques, and then digital twins of systems for vulnerability analysis. You know, we had this whole, you know, this digital revolution, you know, that's been kind of promoted here, where they want things like a digital twin that's basically, you know, a computer representation of a physical system, right? So that you can do some analysis on it, you can change things, and you know, it's much easier to change the digital version than the actual physical version to do your testing. Some of the things that we're looking at, certainly space cyber applications, heterogeneous trust concepts, which is kind of interesting. And that's the idea, again, that you're not going to have this homogeneous level of trust where you trust every single system. You're going to trust some systems more than you're going to trust other systems. And how can you get the mission done in that type of environment where maybe you don't trust systems that you rely on at all? The future computing platform implications, future UAS threats. So our counter UAS team is starting to look at things like swarms of UAS and how they would counter that. And then cyber workforce transformation. So that is Viceroy, and that is our ACE cybersecurity bootcamp program. So we are certainly interested in informing you know, workforce education and training so that we can help provide you know, informed and trained and educated folks to go out and work for the DoD, to work for the industrial base, to help us in the fight. All right, so some of our recent transition activities of note, our COSTA team, that's our counter UAS team. They transitioned, you know, Ninja counter UAS systems to over 200 bases around the globe. We have our RCPAT program. And so, you know, in the military, we have a lot of different processes. And, you know, in the past, you would transition a huge aircraft and it would take a really long time to transition it. And we just don't have that same amount of time in cyber because the environment is changing so rapidly. And so they have this RCPAT team has done a really excellent job of rapidly transitioning things directly to the warfighter, because sometimes our traditional transition paths, they're just too slow. By the time you would get it into the warfighter hands, you would already need something new. Then our advanced course in engineering cybersecurity bootcamp, they have done incredible work on mission-enabled cyber exercises. And so they have, transitioned some of their cyber exercises to undergraduate cyber warfare training, where our cyber warfare folks in the Air Force are trained and educated. They've also transitioned to NSA. I mean, they've done a lot of really great work in kind of pushing forward the concept of what a cyber exercise should be, from kind of a traditional capture the flag style exercise to these mission scenarios where, you're taking out a high value target, you're not defending a server. All right, so that's a little bit about what we do here at RI and what we do in the cyber realm. So we have different opportunities for you. We have the Information Institute. This is a great opportunity for professors, and then the professors can bring a student as well. We have a couple different programs in the summer. One is our Visiting Faculty Research Program, and the other is our Summer Faculty Fellowship Program, which is funded through AFOSR. And so, professors and their students can come here to study and do some work, maybe write a paper over the summertime. They come here and they work at Innovare or at the lab over the summertime. So there's a link there if anyone would like more information as a professor or a student who is interested in this program. We also have the RI intern program. And so this is a 10-week summer program where you come and you work with an RI scientist or engineer over the summertime, and you work on a project, and it might culminate in some type of implementation or a paper. And so, it covers all 4 of the CTCs, and people work on a wide variety of research projects. They also have travel and housing assistance for those who live more than 50 miles from Rome, New York. Pretty much all of our intern programs do that because we recognize that, students are going to school and might not have the funding in order to travel to Rome and house themselves. So that's a nice thing that they provide here. And there's a link there if you're interested. I mean, so these summer programs are already kind of set for this year, but for students who are looking for something for next year, these are opportunities that you can take a look at. All right, another internship program opportunity that we have here at the lab is ACE. It's the Advanced Course in Engineering Cybersecurity Bootcamp. It is near and dear to my heart because I was the curriculum director for many years and the director as well. And so this is a 10-week program, and they use really illustrative language. So they say they forge a cadre of cyber warriors and leaders of consequence, and they really do. You are immersed in kind of the operational mindset of a cyber operator for the Air Force. You do things like, planning operations, going through the whole cycle from planning to execution. They do run 8 miles each week. They go to Gettysburg and they walk the battlefields, and they talk a little bit about kind of the parallels between cyber warfare and warfare back in the time of the Civil War. And so there's some eligibility there. They take rising juniors and seniors majoring in computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering, math, or a computer security related major. People need to be U.S. citizens eligible for a DoD secret clearance, and it's a wonderful program. All right, and then of course Viceroy, which we're all in. We have the Maven summer internship here that is for Viceroy students exclusively. And so this is an 8-week cyber and electromagnetic spectrum paid internship. So we cover housing, travel, and I think it's 100 meals over the summer in addition to the hourly pay that you receive. And this year it's from 12 June to 4 August. And I think we're up to 45 interns now. We have 5 graduate assistants. And so we kind of combine classwork with research. And so we look at leadership, we look at making you better writers, public speakers, because those things are so critical when you're a scientist. I never would have imagined, studying as an undergraduate, how often I would be writing and speaking and how important those skills are. So those are skills we certainly try to hone at Maven. We have research, there is a capstone at the end that is put on by our Blue Edge team, and then we have a graduation dinner. And so what we focus on in Maven is we look at the Air Force and Space Force mission set. And so we look at lecture topics. So you'll learn about uncrewed aerial systems, satellite systems, cyber-enabled munitions, SCADA systems, and military Internet of Things. You do research projects with AFRI mentors 3 days a week. And then we're going to be doing a Blue Book cyber vulnerability assessment of a mission system, a satellite system, taking a look at the architecture and design and identifying potential vulnerabilities in the specification, in the implementation, in its protocols. And we're going to also have you write an IEEE conference style paper on research projects. And then on Fridays, we have hands-on cyber and electromagnetic spectrum exercises with the software-defined radio. And so, again, our class is set for the summer, but for those of you who are looking for an internship in 2024, be on the lookout in fall of 2023, because that application information will come out from your Viceroy school. All right, and one cool thing that we have at Viceroy is we do leverage the Blue Edge Concord Dawn capstone. So again, this goes beyond a typical capture the flag exercise where you need to transmit the coordinates of a high value target to a UAV to enable a target strike, while kind of dropping this cone of silence around the high value target so they don't get warned and move away. So this is a real exciting kind of final capstone that the students. All right, and so there are also going to be future internship program opportunities. We are hoping, because we are looking to take Viceroy Maven, which focuses on the Air Force and the Space Force, and expand that to the Army and the Navy. And so we just put out a request for information. And, in the future, it will be great to have 3 different internship options for Viceroy students, who want to learn about the Air Force and the Space Force, or maybe the Army, or maybe the Navy. And so that's kind of where we're going. And that is what I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Awesome. That was a wonderful overview, Sonia. So I'm going to open up time for questions. People can tell me, and they can go ahead and ask the question when I allow them. And if somebody's speaking, then maybe we would use the chat feature too. Okay, so that's just a note. So while people ask, think of a question to ask, Sonia, I want to ask about Maven. I know you are the architect for it, and the ACE experience is what is coming into Maven. I know also our own students are now going to participate. Can you speak a little bit about what project that they would work on, how they are going to be kind of paired up with what project to work on? That portion of it is probably something that students would like to know.
Sure, absolutely. We definitely do try to pair up mentors and students with their interest areas. So for example, when we put a call out for mentors, we ask them what types of skill sets they're looking for. So if they're looking for somebody, for example, who can code in Python, we try to pair them up with somebody who, can also, do that coding in Python. So we do try to match you. And then, all of our projects are team efforts. And so sometimes, we'll combine the skill sets of multiple people together in order to kind of meet those requirements. And so one really nice thing about Maven is that, we're not going to be putting individuals paired with a mentor. It will be a team paired with a mentor. So you won't be working by yourself.
Great.
Oh, and some examples, for example, there will be one team working on Internet of Things, doing some development work with that team. They do a lot of implementation of different Internet of Things devices, and they're looking to improve the security of those devices. And they're a really great team. They sit right next to me, and they're really looking forward to having students. They had students last year too, so they're looking for a team of students to help them with their experimentation. So it will be a lot of hands-on work.
Great. I'm going to see if there is anybody who has got a question. Do you have questions? And Gabriel has put in a little survey, so take the time to complete that to make sure that your attendance is noted and give feedback on what you've heard. Let me see if anybody has got any questions. You can also unmute and speak.
Sure. Well, no problem. You know, and if people, you know, have any questions about Maven, I'm sure they can reach out to you, and, you know, feel free to forward them on to me if they'd rather just ask in an email. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm really excited to, you know, welcome folks to Rome this summer. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yes. So I started off with Maven, but I'm sure that, you know, someone may have on the broader things that happen at the AFRL too. I can ask another question, maybe.
Sure, absolutely.
Space Force is not something that comes to our minds that often, right? And since when you were listing the kind of priorities and the challenges that are there, there were, of course, some similar ones. But is it fair to say generally the electromagnetic spectrum kind of emphasis or you know, component that Viceroy has would get greater role in Space Force than it is in Air Force? Or how would you kind of compare the two forces in terms of where the challenges are?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar, just because there are so many different types of wireless communications that are on, for example, UAVs. I mean, you know, they're flown by wire. Munitions, especially, I mean, that is one that certainly, you know, has caught our interest. You know, but satellite systems are the same, because you have a ground station, you have, you know, your user system, you have your space vehicle up in the air, and they're all usually so I think it's prevalent in both Air Force and Space Force missions.
Great. If there is anybody who has got a question, I'm watching out the chat session. So this will be recorded, Sonia. If it's okay, we'll make it available on the CISR website, and so will the slides be too. So I'm sure students will get a chance to review and come back and ask questions if they have.
Sure, absolutely. Happy to answer any questions in the future.
Great.
Yeah, that was a lot of great information in a short amount of time. So we appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Absolutely. I really appreciate the invitation.
And we look forward to seeing you in May. We can get you some more Cougar Gold.
Yes.
So we are at the moment finalizing what the schedule
on my Cougar
will be. And as soon as the schedule is semi-finalized, there could be some tweaks here and there. You will get to see what it looks like.
Great. Yep,
and it's not going to snow. It's not going to snow in May, so that one we can guarantee.
Hopefully not. Here's to hoping. You never know. All right.
All right. So if
again, you know, thanks everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity. Sorry.
Thank you very much, Sonia. That was a wonderful